My name is Ethan, and like most people, I thought I truly understood what love was back then. I deeply understood what love, loyalty, and devotion were. Love is when you are accepted for who you are. I firmly believed in romantic stories where a guy and a girl meet, fall in love, and stay together no matter what. I was completely convinced, totally committed, and invested everything I had in my relationship with Claire, my fiancée. It was a bittersweet relationship. We had been dating for 3 years, engaged for 8 months, and our wedding was set for June. I had planned and built our life together, both financially and emotionally. Everything was going smoothly until one evening in April when she looked me in the eyes and, as casually as if she were asking for a glass of water, uttered those devastating words. "I need a month to decide if you're worth it." Everything froze. My world stopped. I remember her saying something to me, while in my head I was struggling to control my breathing and heartbeat. It was useless. "I need a month to decide if you're worth it," was the cruelest thing I had ever heard, and it blocked out my entire existence. But her explanation was given to me as if I were a small child. I was in complete shock, feeling my chest tighten, my ears ring, and my palms become ice cold. I couldn't believe what was happening. When I tried to wave my hand at her to snap out of it and maybe get back to the life I had just a moment ago, she just turned away and shook her head. "Ethan, I just need some space." I could see it on her face. A whole month to think about us? Just to think about whether this is really what I want? I felt like I was standing on the edge of an emotional precipice, and she was waiting to see if I would fall with dignity or head first. I imagined her searching for me if I fell off the edge. For a moment, I thought she was cheating on me. When she said no, I thought everything was fine. But her brief pause said otherwise. Instead of confirming my worst fears, instead of saying, she said that I was overthinking simple things like life's little mysteries. Love really does blind you. In the silence between words, you can hear the truth, but the truth hurts, so you decide to accept the lie that seems soft and easy. Maybe I could have tried to reason with her or even beg her and say that I was willing to discuss the issue. All I had to do was agree, and yes, okay was indeed my answer. But it wasn't that simple. On my part, it was much more complicated. I said, "Don't rush," and those words came from a broken heart. But for some reason, she accepted my answer. Instead of fighting, she seemed grateful, even though she was ready to fight. But I gave her the opposite. That evening, she kissed me gently on the cheek, and as I stood in the doorway waiting to leave, my thoughts were racing through my head, from her embrace to the many arms she could end up in. The first week was hell for me. I told myself that she needed time to clear her head and that eventually she would open her eyes and realize that what we had was worth fighting for. Every day I sent her a one-line message, which was just enough to show her that I was still there. Sometimes she replied, and sometimes she ignored me. What was worse, when she did decide to reply, her messages seemed empty and lifeless. No tenderness, no playfulness, nothing. It was like a broken record repeating the same boring tune. By the end of the second week, I started to notice some signs. Her social media had previously been sparse and full of meaningless posts. Now it was filled to the brim with new photos, new stories, and new videos. Hidden videos from parties with friends I had never met. One photo caught my attention and reinforced my thoughts. It was a reflection of a man's hand in the window behind her, his arm draped over her shoulder. She had cropped the photo so that his face wasn't visible, but I recognized the watch on his wrist. It definitely wasn't mine, and then the pain started to subside. I stopped texting her. I stopped checking her social media. I started digging. It didn't take long. A mutual friend told me that Claire had gone to dinner with some guy at a fancy rooftop bar downtown. After a little pressure, she admitted that the guy was her ex, the one she had promised long ago to cut out of her life because he was toxic and manipulative. When I heard that, I just laughed. It wasn't a laugh that meant happiness anymore, but a pure, incredulous, and disgusting laugh. I didn't want to see her right away. Personally, I wanted to see how far she would go in this month of reflection. One day I decided to follow her. She couldn't see me from that distance. She walked into a wine bar as if she were a guest. With her hair curled and her lips red, just like on our first anniversary, she was ready. And there he was. Smug, tall, slumped in his chair as if she belonged to him. Finally, for the first time in months, she was glowing as she looked at him. That smile told me everything I needed to know. She had made up her mind some time ago and was just pretending that she needed space. I didn't cry or yell. That was my decision. Instead, I decided to pour myself a drink and start working on a plan. If she needed space, I would give her plenty of it. I had long ago decided that I wasn't going to sit in the corner, ready for a hug. Over the next 2 weeks, I painstakingly and methodically cleaned out my half of our shared apartment. The wedding was off. I contacted the florist, the caterer, and even the photographer to return everything that could be returned. I transferred the rest of my savings to an account she never had access to. Now all I had to do was wait. A month later, she finally called. This time her voice was softer, almost cautious. She wanted to know if I was free to meet her for dinner. I was free, so I chose the cafe where we had our first date. She walked in wearing the necklace I had given her for her birthday, which she had promised never to take off. She was beaming and said, "I've made a decision. I want to be with you, Ethan. I'm sorry it took me so long, but now I know you're the one I want to marry." I was in complete shock and even wondered if she could see the contempt in my eyes. I leaned back in my chair and let her finish her endless monologue about what's important in life. When she was done, I thanked her for sharing her thoughts. "But," I said, trying to sound casual, "I've made a decision, too." She blinked, completely taken aback. I told her about the dinners, my ex, the nights we spent together, and the wine bar. I told her about the watches and the lies. She was shocked, her face turning pale, then red, then pale again. Claire started stammering about closing and just talking. But I cut her off. "You didn't need a month to make up your mind, Claire. You needed time to figure out if it was worth giving up what we had. Now you have your answer." As I explained this to her, she reached for my hand. I pulled it away first. "You have your space," I said firmly, standing up. "And now you have the rest of your life to fill it." I left the room without looking back. That same evening, I blocked her on all social media. Now there would be no more calls, no more texts, no more late-night drunken apologies. A week later, a mutual friend told me that her ex had already met someone else, and Claire was left to ponder how she had lost 2 men in a month. I felt neither happiness nor sympathy. I felt only freedom. Love sometimes dies not with a loud explosion of fireworks, but with a quiet, deliberate closing of the door. The best revenge is not to hurt them, but to break ties and let them remain in the void they created for themselves. In this case, Claire had a month to decide if I was worth waiting for. The choice was mine. I decided she wasn't worth a second of my life. The end.